because our Mayapur Institute host is not present. He has made me a host. And because he has to go for the Julian Yatra celebrations that are going on. So he's part of that. I can tell you the page number. So Krishna Chandra Prabhu, would you like to read?
Okay, Prabhu.
It's page number 205.
Yeah,
This is Hamburg, Germany, 25th of August, 1969. Is that right?
Yeah, correct, Prabhu.
Bro, we can't hear you. Are you on mute?
No, can you hear me now? Hare Krishna.
Your voice is very faint, actually.
Oh. How about now, Prabhu?
Slightly better.
I have to come closer to the. Hare Krishna. Is it okay, Prabhu?
Better.
Okay.
Better, but it's still.
Oh.
You have a headphone or something? If you have a headphone, it may work better.
Mine, this is.
Maybe you'll have to log out and log in, I guess.
Well, okay, I'll log out first.
We're just waiting for Krishna Chandra Prabhu to join back. Okay, he's joined back. Bro, can you just unmute and try now?
Can you hear me now, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Okay. Hamburg, 25th, August 25th, 1969. Prabhupada and Purushottama flew from Los Angeles to New York, stopped over for 24 hours.
I mean, one sec, hold on. There is still some difficulty, I think. Is everyone able to hear him? Can you unmute and tell me if you're able to hear him?
Yeah, Prabhu, he is audible for me, Prabhu. His voice is clear for me.
Voice is clear, but is it, loud enough?
Yeah, it's loud enough, Prabhu. Now, after rejoining, it is very clear enough.
See, when you're speaking, it appears at a very good decibel volume, But
Yeah.
when he's speaking, I can barely hear what he's saying.
Hare Krishna. Now, Prabhu?
Still, can you just read the first two sentences? Let's see them.
Prabhupada and Purushottama flew from Los Angeles to New York. Is it okay?
Not really. Indulika Kripa Mataji, would you like to read? Or you're traveling?
Maybe Satyavrata Chaitanya Das Prabhu.
Satyavrata Prabhu, would you like to read?
Sorry, Prabhu, I don't have book right now with me, Prabhu. I'm outside. I'm in the house.
Your voice is very clear, actually. Your voice is very clear.
Yeah, I switch off the video, see how it goes, huh?
Okay.
Prabhupada and Purushottama flew from Los Angeles to New York. Is it okay?
Better, I think.
Okay. Over for 24 hours. Is it better?
I can hear you, but others can hear him. Could you unmute and tell me if you can hear him?
Yes, I can hear.
Pardon?
I can hear.
Okay. Okay, Krishna Chandra Prabhu, please continue.
Okay. Prabhupada and Purushottama flew from Los Angeles to New York, stopped over for 24 hours, and then flew by Lufthansa Airlines non-stop to Hamburg. The stewardess wanted to give them cooked meals and seemed personally disappointed when Prabhupada wouldn't take them. They asked if he would take fruits and then produce a good variety. Prabhupada accepted. When Prabhupada and Purushottama arrived in Hamburg, Sivananda, Krishnadas, and two other boys were at the airport to greet him. They had a taxi waiting. The weather was grey and cold despite the season. As the taxi passed the streets lined with close, neat homes, Prabhupada said it reminded him of Calcutta. When the Europeans had gone to India, they had built houses similar to these. The temple was on Appendorfer Weg in a business area next to a hair salon. The storefront with its plate glass window printed blue except for an oval in the center and Radha Krishna temple. Painted over the window could have been in New York or San Francisco, except for the sign Internationally Geslachvat for Krishna Bewustin B. The apartment Sivananda had rented for Prabhupada was two small rooms on the 15th floor of a modern building across the street from the storefront. Sivananda and a few others came before Prabhupada in his room, and Sivananda apologized that Krishna consciousness was so small in Hamburg. They had heard how devotees in Los Angeles were going out, sometimes 50 at a time, chanting and dancing in the streets and distributing hundreds of back to Godheads. But in Hamburg, Sivananda and another boy had gone out chanting only a few times with little success. They had no speaking engagements for Prabhupada, Sivananda said, and they weren't sure if many people would attend the temple lectures, although they had advertised around town with posters. Prabhupada smiled and sat back. That's all right, and he began talking with Uttama Sloka about his progress in translating Bhagavad Gita as it is into German. With Purushottama busy typing Prabhupada's translation and letters, Sivananda did most of the personal service for Prabhupada, cooking, accompanying Prabhupada on his morning walk, giving him his daily massage. Purushottama looked rather gloomy. He seemed unhappy to be in Hamburg, perched high in a skyscraper under a grey north German sky, with a tiny temple and almost no devotees. But Sivananda was exuberant. It seemed that Prabhupada had come to ISKCON Hamburg just to give him the mercy of his personal association. In his room, Prabhupada told Sivananda he would lecture in the temple on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings. He would see guests in the afternoon, the two devotees ready for initiation, some regular visitors who wanted to see Prabhupada, and a young Indologist, Dr. Franz Bernhardt, who had academic interest in seeing Prabhupada. Prabhupada then began speaking about how intelligent Germans were. He said among the Europeans, German scholars were the most adept in Sanskrit, and they had a lively interest in Indian philosophy. Prabhupada had German godbrother who had come to India and been initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So he had heard something about German culture from his godbrother. As for manufactured products, he continued, if some things were made in Germany, it was first class. The next best was Japanese and then American. He said the Hamburg devotees should strive to establish Sankirtan here as it was in the US. He described how the Los Angeles temple was decorated and how hundreds of people came to the Sunday Love Feast. They should make the temple in Germany even more important than the one in Los Angeles. And they should go out and distribute magazines and from the collections support the center. He said they should at least go out an hour a day. If the devotees really wanted to remain in Germany, they should try to learn the German language. Although German was a foreign language to some of the Hamburg devotees, Prabhupada said that somehow they had to present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness to the German people. He gave the example that if in a foreign country a man discovers fire in the building, he has to get help from the neighbor, even though he doesn't know their language. He may not express himself in good language, but that's not important. Because of the urgency of the situation, he can still get his message across. Similarly, the material world is the blazing fire of Maya, and a devotee has to inform the people, even if he has to use broken language. A friendly German husband and wife entered the room and sat in the back. The girl told Prabhupada she enjoyed reading his book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada was very glad and said that both she and her husband should read the books carefully and then preach the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the Europeans. Hours went by while Prabhupada painted a realistic but vigorous vision of how these few devotees could use their energies in spreading Krishna consciousness in Germany. The next day, he went out for a walk accompanied by a few devotees. Prabhupada wore turtleneck sweater and a large black coat but no hat. He carried a cane. The boys were dressed in pants, coats, and hats, except Krishna Das, who wore suit and tie, since he would have to go to work at the jeweler's shop after the war. Sivananda took Prabhupada to the Hamburg harbor, Landsbruck, on the Elbe River. The weather was still gray, damp, and for August, cold. People driving by turned looking at Prabhupada and even stopped their cars to stare. Prabhupada was himself very surprised to see some ditch diggers pausing to drink beer at this early hour. They are drinking beer already, he turned to Sivananda. Yes, Prabhupada, Sivananda replied. They begin very early. Then Prabhupada saw one billboard after another, many advertising cigarettes. He explained, oh, cigaretten. Why are these people so fat? Prabhupada asked. Oh, they eat a lot of potatoes, Sivananda said. No, Prabhupada said, they eat a lot of meat. The Germans may be the most intelligent Europeans, Prabhupada said, but they were also most materially attached. Prabhupada and his students stopped to watch a tugboat towing a large ocean liner into the harbor. Just see, Prabhupada said, a man under the spell of Maya is just like this big ocean liner. The tugboat is small, but because the big ocean liner has its engine off, the little boat can drag it. Similarly, the soul without Krishna is pulled by Maya down to hell. As they continued walking, they came upon an open vegetable market. Let's go see what they have, Prabhupada said. Carefully, he observed the selection of fruits and vegetables, paying close attention to details. As they started back, Prabhupada said, this morning I will have eggplant pakoras and hot milk. It's very good for cold weather. It helps keep you warm. Hot milk, Prabhupada? Sivananda asked. Yes, milk means hot cow's milk. As they approached the storefront, Prabhupada remarked, these cigarettes are very popular. For the rest of the day, Prabhupada read, took breakfast, answered letters, took massage at 11, bathed, took lunch, rested an hour, and then received visitors in the afternoon. In the evening, he came down to the temple and lectured on Bhagavad Gita. Although Mandala Bhadra was there ready to translate Prabhupada's word into German, there was no need, since everyone in the audience spoke English. One of the few guests attending Prabhupada's lecture was the landlady. She was in her 80s, lonely and glad to have young people living in her building. Sitting behind a partition where Prabhupada could not see her, she listened to the lecture. When Prabhupada got up from the Vyasasan and walked to the back of the room, he found her sitting there. Oh, he said, the landlady is a devotee too. Sivananda had no experience arranging lectures for Prabhupada, nor did he have the time. He was busy cooking and doing other duties for Prabhupada. Krishna Das worked full-time. Under the circumstances, Professor Bernhard's visit was a major outside engagement for Prabhupada during his Hamburg visit. Sivananda had met Professor Bernhard months ago at the University of Hamburg after hearing of a Sanskrit and Indology professor on campus. Without knowing anything about the etiquette of dealing with a professor, he had entered Dr. Bernard's office without an appointment. We are going to start a Radha Krishna temple here, Sivananda had told the professor. Are you familiar with the Vedic scriptures? Although Professor Bernhard remained strictly formal with Sivananda, he couldn't deny any academic interest in Krishna consciousness. He had studied Vaishnavism, specializing in Indian religious festivals. When Sivananda invited him to come and meet Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Professor Bernhard had eagerly taken the opportunity. Professor Bernhard, a well-dressed young man with a wavy blonde hair, sat patiently through one of Prabhupada's kirtans and lectures in the temple. Afterwards, in fluent English, he asked, what about we here in the city who have cosmopolitan consciousness? What is this cosmopolitan consciousness? Prabhupada asked. They are killing the animals. Prabhupada explained to him the universality of Krishna consciousness. I'm interested, Dr. Bernhard said, to learn about difference between Sanskritis and Vaishnavas and their philosophies. Oh yes, Prabhupada replied, I will teach you. And they agreed to meet again at Prabhupada's apartment. Krishna Das. A couple days after Prabhupada arrived in Hamburg, Dr. Bernhard came laden with gifts. He was very conscious of Vaishnava protocol. Even if he were in the Himalayas in this cold, horrendous weather, he would be freshly shaven and wearing a tie. He was very punctual and precise. Prabhupada talked with him, and the entire conversation was in Sanskrit. As a matter of fact, every now and then, Prabhupada would put in a couple of words of English for our benefit. For 3 or 4 days, there were continual meetings between Prabhupada and Dr. Bernhard. They culminated in a statement by Dr. Bernhard. He lapsed into English and said, what you're saying is that all my knowledge is useless without devotional service. Prabhupada said, yes, now you have understood. Then Dr. Bernhard said, what you're saying is that all my studies, an entire library, are just like an ass laden down with so many books that are ultimately pushing him to his grave. Again, Prabhupada said, yes, that is right. When Dr. Bernhard remarked that he had been thinking of ISKCON as hippies since he had seen an ad stating that Allen Ginsberg was a member, Prabhupada took it very seriously. The next day, he wrote Hayagriva. From his conversation, I understand that people are very badly impressed about Ginsberg, especially respectable persons on account of his hippie tendencies. I, of course, supported our case that Ginsberg is a great friend of our society, and we advised everyone to chant Hare Krishna. And I believe he also does. Anyway, we should be very much careful not to publish anything in our paper which will give impression to the public that we are inclined to the hippie movement. In our papers, nothing should be published which has even a small tinge of hippie ideas. I must tell you in this connection that if you have any sympathies with the hippie movement, you should kindly give them up. Prabhupada's third meeting with Dr. Bernhard was at the professor's home. This time, Dr. Bernhard confessed to Prabhupada, and he did not agree with many points in Prabhupada's translation of the Vedic literatures. He criticized the Vaishnava philosophy. He also told Prabhupada he had no religious feeling for Krishna consciousness since he considered himself a Christian. By end of the meeting, their relationship was becoming strained, and afterwards, Prabhupada remarked that in none of their meetings had the professor even said Hare Krishna. September 3rd, 1969. Within a week of Prabhupada's arrival in Germany, the Janmashtami holiday occurred. Prabhupada observed Janmashtami, Krishna's birthday, quietly, not like the previous year in Montreal, with hundreds of Indians had gathered along with disciples from many temples. Here, there were only about half a dozen devotees on hand. They fasted and then came to Prabhupada's apartment in the evening. Prabhupada talked about Krishna and they chanted together. Then at 11:30 p.m., Prabhupada decided to have his head shaved, something he usually did once a month. Krishna Das carefully shaved his spiritual master's head while the others sat and watched. Although it was not a customary activity of Janmashtami night, the devotees loved associating with Prabhupada in this intimate way. Then at midnight, Prabhupada went with them to the temple where they broke their fast. The next day was Vyasa Puja day, the celebration of Prabhupada's 74th birthday. That morning, a package arrived from New York containing several copies of Vyasa Puja booklet and a 25-page paperback filled with homages from Prabhupada's disciples. Months before, one of the devotees had discovered an old issue of magazine published by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. The magazine contained a Vyasa Puja homage Prabhupada had written commemorating the appearance day of his own spiritual master. When the article had been brought to Prabhupada's attention, he said that his disciple could also write their own appreciations, just as he had done 40 years before. So the devotees in New York had gathered offerings from 17 different temples and had printed them all in a Vyasa Puja booklet. Prabhupada was very pleased to receive the little booklet. Then he had one of the devotees read it aloud in the temple. When all the readings were finished, he explained how service and prayers were accepted by Krishna through the medium of the disciplic succession. Although outsiders might think that this man is becoming flattered in hearing his own eulogy, the real meaning of Vyasa Puja homage is that it tests how well the disciples were understanding Krishna consciousness and serving their spiritual master. Their praises were all going to the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the disciplic succession, and such praises were required training for the disciple. Just as officers train soldiers in the military, but in this case, the training was in the feelings of pure consciousness. Sitting on the Vyasasana, Prabhupada looked out at his little band of disciples sitting before him on a linoleum floor of the well-lit storefront. I thank you for improving Krishna consciousness, he said. I am a sannyasi, so I've come here empty-handed. You are providing for me. What can I do? I can simply pray to Krishna for you. But don't be satisfied that you have understood. This knowledge should be distributed. In my old age, I have come to your country carrying the order of my spiritual master to distribute. You are all young boys and girls, so take this and distribute it to the whole humanity. They will be happy. That morning, Prabhupada initiated 5 devotees, 3 regular brahmacharis, Vasudev, Ramantu, and Suchandra, who had all been chanting and serving for almost a year, and to the surprise of other devotees, a married couple who had only recently been visiting the temple. When one of the devotees questioned the couple's eligibility, Prabhupada said that as long as they were chanting and following four rules, they were eligible. Prabhupada named the couple Vishwanatha and Kunti. He told the new initiates that if they would keep always in contact with chanting of Hare Krishna, they would be always purified. He compared the purification required before one could enter the spiritual world to the adjustment required by astronauts before they could enter the moon. But as far as we are concerned, we don't think that they were actually successful. Prabhupada also told the initiates that on behalf of Krishna, he was working to distribute knowledge and that those who were actually fortunate would take it. Our job is to teach people and give practical suggestions, Prabhupada explained. Those who are fortunate will take. Otherwise, we shall go on canvassing. Each person was independent and could take or not. Although God would never interfere with their independence, they should understand that proper use of their independence was to become unalloyed servants of God. Prabhupada was giving his new disciples what he knew to be the sublime gift for human life. But they were all individual spirit souls, free agents, and they had to decide out of their own free will to surrender to Krishna or not. In the case of Vishwanatha and Kunti, Prabhupada was obviously taking a risk, but he wanted to give them a chance. Every morning, Prabhupada would take a stroll to one of the nearby parks, sometimes with few disciples, sometimes with only Sivananda. Sometimes while he walked along the waterfront, Prabhupada would ask about shipbuilding and related industries, and Krishna Das would answer. When Prabhupada asked Krishna Das what the population of Hamburg was, he knew. Prabhupada began to jokingly call Krishna Das Stats because he knew many statistics. One morning, while Stats was answering Prabhupada's question about various cranes used in shipbuilding, Prabhupada turned to others and said, "You see, although I'm the Guru, I'm taking you back to Godhead. That doesn't mean that I cannot learn from him." Another morning, Prabhupada and Sivananda were walking alone in the park. Because of Sivananda's tight schedule and lack of sufficient sleep, he was feeling tired. Prabhupada noticed Sivananda's fatigue and suggested they sit down on a park bench. Prabhupada sat down carefully while Sivananda sprawled. Exchanging looks with Sivananda, Prabhupada sat forward even straighter, removing his bag from the backrest. Seeing the great contrast in their sitting postures, Sivananda sat up straight. Back in the temple, his walk, about 5 devotees accompanied him to the park. Again, Prabhupada said, "All right, let's sit down." The 2 park benches faced each other, and as Prabhupada sat down carefully with his back straight, all the devotees sat very straight opposite him on the bench, looking over at Prabhupada. Seeing his disciples sitting seriously in a rigid line, in an obvious imitation of himself, Prabhupada began to laugh. One morning, Prabhupada and a few devotees walked past a church situated on its own plot of land, surrounded by several other buildings belonging to the church. Admiring the community-like arrangement, Prabhupada said to Sivananda, "So you will get this church for us." "I will see, Prabhupada." In India, Prabhupada said, there are situations very similar to this. There is a temple, and around the temple, all the devotees are living. It's a nice situation. Another morning, Prabhupada remarked about extraordinary amount of garbage in front of the house. Sivananda explained that this was a monthly function in German cities, a throw-out day when everybody puts out junk and things from their attic that the garbage collectors ordinarily do not take. On throw-out day, the garbage collectors come with a special truck and remove all oversized garbage. Prabhupada noticed all sorts of usable items and he would point out with his cane, why don't you take that for the temple? Well, Prabhupada, we already have one of those. After a while, Prabhupada would investigate another person's garbage and point with his cane. Yes, get that, get that. Repeatedly, Sevananda explained the temple already had that articles, but Prabhupada continued to point things out. Finally, Prabhupada found an oriental rug sitting on the curb. Yes, now this you can use. And Prabhupada had them carry the rug back to the temple. The rug turned out to be in such a good shape that after cleaning it, they placed it in the temple room. The weather continued cold and overcast with only about 2 days of sunshine. During Prabhupada's 3-week stay, after a walk one cold drizzly morning, while Prabhupada was waiting with Sevananda for the elevator, Sevananda was rubbing his hand together. You're cold? Prabhupada said. And he touched Sevananda's hand. Feel my hand. It was warm. If you keep this area of the body warm, Prabhupada put his hands on his chest, then the rest of the body will be warm. Sevananda could not help but feel overwhelming affection for Prabhupada, even in such a small reciprocations. Every morning, walk would reveal many such treasurable little incidents. Sevananda was not an experienced cook, so Prabhupada taught him. The apartment kitchen was small, about 6 feet square, with an electric stove, sink, and a little counter space. When Prabhupada said that Sevananda made good eggplant pakoras, Sevananda made eggplant pakoras daily. Then one morning, Prabhupada asked, "You're not cooking the eggplant again, are you?" Prabhupada then taught Sevananda some other things to cook, including a special way to cook cabbage, a way to cook chapatis by cooking them on one side in the oven, taking them out, and then cooking them on the other side on the electric burner. Prabhupada asked for mangoes, but it was difficult to find them in Hamburg. Those that Sevananda could find were still green. Prabhupada instructed Sevananda to put the peeled mangoes in a sugar solution for a week. When the mangoes turned black, they became a kind of mango chutney. Sevananda knew Prabhupada's concern for not wasting anything, so he asked him what to do with the mango peels. Prabhupada seemed surprised, but he said, if you want to do something with the peels, then put them in mustard oil with salt and turmeric. The devotees tried this, but they found the taste awful, except for Mandalibhadra, who liked them. For breakfast, Sevananda would usually take whatever was left on Prabhupada's plate. One morning, there was very little left, so Sevananda began cooking cereal for himself. He had just begun eating the cereal in another room when Prabhupada entered. Prabhupada took one look at Sevananda's cereal and told him to come to the kitchen. Then Prabhupada showed Sevananda how to make halva, cooking farina and butter and mixing it with boiling sugar water. When you want something to eat, Prabhupada said, then you can make this halva. Prabhupada still had his small Radha Krishna deities in Hamburg, and they sat on the little altar shelf within his closet. Whatever Sevananda would cook, Prabhupada would have him make a plate and then bring it and offer it with prayers to Radha and Krishna. One day, while Sevananda was cooking, Prabhupada came into the kitchen door and motioned for Sevananda to come out. He then led Sevananda to the open closet before the deities of Radha Krishna. Gesturing to the deities, Prabhupada said, "It is not for me that you're cooking, but it is for them." Prabhupada had come to Hamburg knowing the center was undeveloped, but he wanted to encourage the devotees there and gave Sevananda the opportunity to serve him personally on Prabhupada's behalf. Sivananda had so submissively come here and started the center. Now Prabhupada had come to encourage him by engaging him as his walking companion, cook, and monsieur. One day, Sivananda was massaging Prabhupada's head, and Prabhupada began to explain that as a person gets older, the body does not digest food as well. The stomach begins producing bad air, and by massage, these air become redistributed. Sivananda became concerned and thoroughly absorbed himself in giving Prabhupada his massage. Every day at 11, Sivananda would come in and give Prabhupada his massage. One morning, he entered the room and found Prabhupada sitting in a chair by the window, his head covered with blanket, chanting Hare Krishna on his beads. You should pray for Krishna for me, Prabhupada said to Sivananda. Sivananda was surprised. How could he pray for his spiritual master? He began to stammer. Well, Prabhupada, I don't think it would work. Why not? You are a devotee of Krishna. Another time, Prabhupada asked Sivananda to massage around his heart. He asked him to push hard. Sivananda thought he was rubbing Prabhupada too hard, Prabhupada. But Prabhupada said, just push hard. Sivananda asked Prabhupada as if his health was all right. But Prabhupada seemed annoyed that he had asked. Again, Sivananda expressed remorse. It must not be very good for you here in Hamburg, he said. You were staying in Los Angeles and there were so many devotees there and the situation was so nice. Now you have come here and there's practically nobody. That's all right, Prabhupada said softly. We are doing our preaching work, whether there are a lot of devotees or not. Prabhu? Hare Krishna?
Yes, Roji. Yes, Roji.
Now we are going to chapter 8 to Latin.
Yeah, no, just hold on. I was just going to ask you to hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that we notice here is how Prabhupada is unaffected by the response of the people to the process of Krishna consciousness. He's very fixed in carrying out the orders of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And in carrying out that order, Prabhupada is not carried away either by success or by failure. Yes, the order is to establish Krishna consciousness, but despite whatever is the situation in Hamburg, you see, Prabhupada is not getting annoyed or restless or nothing of the sort. He takes everything as the mercy of the Lord. And we see how he is engaging Shivananda Prabhu in various aspects of service in Krishna consciousness, very patiently, and very patiently, kindly, lovingly. So Prabhupada tries to demonstrate here in this whole thing is what he demonstrates here in this whole thing is how fixed he is in the order of a spiritual master and how undisturbed he could be in following that order. And in following that order, Prabhupada actually says the nectar of instruction, enthusiasm is the most important principle. So Prabhupada remains enthusiastic despite the hardships, despite the challenges. Prabhupada continuously encourages his disciples in Krishna consciousness. Especially we see here, nothing really significant is happening. But Prabhupada is still pleased, still happy, and he's also telling them how they should spread this Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada remains very calm, very composed, yet very determined, very strong in his focus in Krishna consciousness to carry out the order of his guru, of his spiritual master. And Prabhupada seemed amused about how uh, they abandon garbage, or once a week they abandon some valuable things also. And Prabhupada tries to take one thing or the other for the temple. Finally, manages to take a Oriental rug. And in his interaction with the professor, Prabhupada notices that at any point he did not say Hare Krishna. So for Prabhupada, that is very important because as Prabhupada, when he initiates Vishwanath and Kunti, he told the new initiates that if they would keep always in contact with chanting of Hare Krishna, they would be always purified. So that to always remain in contact with the chanting of Hare Krishna is important for the members of Krishna consciousness movement. We chant minimum of 16 rounds, but we chant unlimitedly. Also, it's not that we are meant to only chant 16 rounds. We are meant to chant 16 rounds minimum. These are some things which I noticed. So if there are any which I wanted to bring up, are there any comments, thoughts? There are so many anecdotes here, so many beautiful anecdotes. If there's something which struck you, or you got some realization hearing some particular anecdote, we can have some time now for you to share your thoughts or realizations or even questions if you have it. Okay, I think Krishna Chandra Prabhu, you can go ahead with chapter 8, Latin America.
In the spring of 1972, after conducting groundbreaking ceremonies at his three new projects in Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Bombay, Srila Prabhupada left India for a world preaching tour. The contested Bombay land purchase had turned into a drawn-out struggle that drew Srila Prabhupada's thoughts anxiously to Bombay wherever he traveled. Yet he preached with full presence of mind from Australia to Hong Kong to Tokyo to Hawaii to Los Angeles. While in Los Angeles, Prabhupada decided to visit Mexico, where his disciples had maintained an ISKCON center for a year. Mexico City, June 2nd, 1972. Accompanied by his secretary Shama Sundara and his servant Nanda Kumara.
I just want, Prabhu, just pause. I just wanted to point out that these are additional pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. So it is not necessarily presented in a continuous format. For example, what we read last chapter was 1969. Now we are in 1972. So we need to be conscious of the fact that these are not like continuous series from, it's not that from Hamburg, Prabhupada went to Latin America. Okay, Hare Krishna. This is the gap of 3 years actually.
Yeah. So accompanied by secretary Shama Sundara and his servant Nanda Kumara, Srila Prabhupada flew into Mexico City in the afternoon. When they disembarked, no devotees were in sight, while his secretary and servant speculated on the circumstances. Srila Prabhupada, appearing tired, sat down on his suitcase and chanted, waiting. After almost an hour, a Mexican couple approached. As the woman bowed down before Prabhupada, the man introduced himself. He was Mr. Ariza, a lawyer, and the lady, Mrs. Adela Dias. They knew the Hare Krishna devotees and recognized their spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Having just come from the temple, the couple told Prabhupada of the devotees' preparation for his arrival. Srila Prabhupada smiled and said he was waiting for his disciples to come and get him. Mrs. Diaz offered to take Srila Prabhupada and his party to the temple in her car, and he agreed. Somehow, they all squeezed into her small red car and headed for the city. It's a shame they have missed you, Mrs. Diaz said. Chit Sukhananda, the temple president, has decorated a large car with flowers to receive you at the airport. Srila Prabhupada commented freely, what good is a big car if it is not here? They arrived at the ISKCON center just as Chitsu Khanda and a party of devotees were arriving at the airport. Srila Prabhupada entered the temple through the kitchen door. A single devotee was cooking. Startled to see Prabhupada, the devotee offered frantic obeisances before him. And Prabhupada asked, where are the devotees? Mr. Ariza and Dias escorted him into the main room, a large open area where devotees and dozens of guests were waiting. When the people saw Prabhupada, they began to kneel before him and with folded hands in the style of Catholic worshippers. He walked forward, pausing to gently touch their heads. A rain of flowers petal caused Prabhupada to look up. From the balcony railing of the second floor, mezzanine devotees showered flowers upon Prabhupada and his party. Ornate flower arrangements decorated the wall. One arrangement formed figures of Radha and Krishna, and another word of the Maha Mantra. They are very artistic, Prabhupada appreciated, just like in India. Belatedly, devotees rushed in from the airport. Conch shells blew, Kirtan began. Chituskanda arrived breathless and apologetic and offered obeisances before Prabhupada. You have created a very nice transcendental atmosphere, Prabhupada said to him. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, Chitsukhananda replied, it is only because you are here. That is very nice. Otherwise, I cannot do anything. Chitsukhananda showed Srila Prabhupada to a room on the second floor where an altar, small deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, and Baladev stood. The freshly painted floor hadn't dried, and devotees spread a cloth for Prabhupada so he could stand before the deities. Although the paint was tacky, Prabhupada pushed the cloth away and paid obeisances on the floor, which retained the faint imprint of his soul and body. Returning to the main room, Prabhupada sat on his decorated Vyasasan and spoke to the waiting guests and devotees. After a short lecture, translated phrase by Lakshmi Priya Dasi, Prabhupada retired to his room. It was about 6 p.m. While Prabhupada rested, the devotees and guests, outnumbered several hundreds, gathered in the main hall below Srila Prabhupada's room and began a mighty kirtan. After an hour, they were still going strong. After 2 hours, Prabhupada's servant came out on the balcony and shouted down, stop the kirtan. The chanting subsided and the servant went back into Prabhupada's room. Srila Prabhupada asked from his bed, why have they stopped the kirtan? I thought it was keeping you awake, Prabhupada. Nanda Kumar said, I can rest with kirtan. Prabhupada said pleasantly, it doesn't bother me. It is transcendental. Tell them to go on. Nanda Kumar then reappeared on the balcony above the crowd and called them. Prabhupada wants to know why the kirtan stopped. So start it up again. The crowd cheered and again began chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, creating waves of blissful sound vibration that rang through the building. Even in the privacy of his room, Prabhupada was enjoying a unique reciprocation with the people of Mexico on his first evening in their country through the medium of the holy name. June 3rd, the next morning, Saturday, in the first initiation ceremony in Latin America, Srila Prabhupada accepted 8 Mexican disciples. He spoke about the mission of Lord Chaitanya and then named the initiates after devotees from the past times in Chaitanya Leela. Srila Prabhupada explained how Lord Chaitanya had turned the non-devotees into devotees during his travel throughout India. Now Prabhupada was himself extending the boundaries of that preaching mission to a new continent, making devotees for Lord Chaitanya wherever he went. Prabhupada had never before met the devotees he was about to initiate, but he was accepting them on recommendation from the temple president, who confirmed that they had all been chanting 16 rounds, following 4 regulative principles for at least 6 months. Of all the candidates, only one young man, a worker in the devotees' incense business, lived outside the temple. But he also had shaved his head and was eager to accept initiation. When he came before Srila Prabhupada to receive his beads, Prabhupada asked him, "Do you want a spiritual life or material life?" The young man was surprised, since Srila Prabhupada hadn't asked anyone else. He thought a moment. "I want a spiritual life." "That's all right," said Srila Prabhupada, and he gave him the beads. Then Srila Prabhupada turned to Hanuman Goswami and asked him to lecture. After a few minutes of speaking, Hanuman launched into a long, involved story without any reference to Shastra. Srila Prabhupada sat tolerantly. After some minutes, however, he interrupted sternly. "Stop this nonsense story. Speak from the Bhagavatam." Hanuman Goswami doubled up as if punched in the stomach by Prabhupada's word, but then he sat upright and continued speaking in strict Parampara. After the initiation, Prabhupada has instructed Hanuman further. "Why did you not speak of the 10 offenses?" he asked. "This is not very good to speak some nonsense story. When we take initiation, better to give them the most important things: how to chant Hare Krishna and the 10 offenses. What is the use of these other things?" That evening, Chichusku Khanda stood in Prabhupada's room about to leave. "Srila Prabhupada, I am almost ashamed to tell you. I know you should rest, but I feel I should at least inform you that we have the opportunity to be on a national television program tonight." "Oh," Prabhupada replied, "how many people will watch?" "About 30 million. It's the most popular show." 30 million? Srila Prabhupada's eyes widened. "Then we must go." "But Prabhupada, you won't be able to get off the program until maybe 1 or 2 in the morning." "Prabhupada, that's all right. We can sleep during the day." Srila Prabhupada was not at all reluctant, as he had seen that the people were eager to hear him. The great response they had shown during his lecture indicated their enthusiasm to receive his message. Chichuskanda. We went to the TV studio, waited there in the audience until after midnight. The program goes until 1:30, so it was good time. 12:30 is the peak of the show. The TV interviewer asked Prabhupada many things. When I translated all of what Prabhupada was explaining, the whole audience became stunned. Prabhupada told them that the world could be happy if they could just love God and chant his name, Hare Krishna. It seemed so simple. Actually, everyone was stunned. Even the MC was just completely stunned by Srila Prabhupada's answer, by his great sense of intelligence, understanding, and devotion. The MC's questions were trivial about why the devotees shaved their heads and wore tilak, why they dressed as they do. But Prabhupada's answers were brilliant. The devotees chanted with Srila Prabhupada during a kirtan, accompanying him with a guitar, Mexican style. At the conclusion of the show, the interviewer asked, "Can you bless me?" Srila Prabhupada explained, "All glories to Mexico City." The program ended. Chichuskanda turned to the television announcer. "Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity." The man made no reply. He was captivated by Srila Prabhupada. He was overwhelmed. Srila Prabhupada left the studio with the devotees, returning to the temple to take rest. Sunday morning, Prabhupada took his walk a few blocks from the temple in Chapulsas Park, a large, beautiful park dating back to the Aztec Empire. As he walked along, he left the beaten paths and entered into the forest full of huge old eucalyptus trees. The devotees appreciated how, without asking anyone's direction, Prabhupada seemed to know exactly how to go, where he wanted, how to extricate himself from the forest and return to the temple. At the temple, Prabhupada inspected all the rooms. He told the devotees it was a good building and they should keep it. He liked it, aware that their standards of service and worship was humble. The devotees were amazed that Prabhupada seemed so pleased what they had done. For over a year, they had been anxiously waiting for him to visit, and now he had come and they were fully satisfied. Prabhupada had been in Mexico less than 24 hours, yet the devotees already had a wealth of incidents, things Srila Prabhupada has said and done in their country to remember. He found the Mexican people pious, their humility, simplicity, and the devotion was reminiscent of the people of India. Mexico is very much like India, he said. That same morning, Prabhupada held a second initiation ceremony. That afternoon, at the Sunday festival, hundreds of people, as many as could fit, crowded into the hall and onto the second floor balcony to catch a glimpse of Srila Prabhupada and to hear from him. Radha Krishna. The first day I saw Srila Prabhupada was at the Sunday lecture. I've never seen the temple so crowded, and yet it was completely quiet. There were reporters, students, people interested in different kind of yoga and transcendentalism. Srila Prabhupada mainly spoke about the principles of yoga. He specifically spoke on the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody asked him why we discourage people from practicing the popular yoga that everyone practices. In answer, Prabhupada developed a description of all that Lord Krishna says in the 6th chapter about the qualities and requirements to practice yoga. He told how the yogi should practice celibacy, go to a sacred place, sit down, practice the breathing exercises, and all the austerities. Yoga was already very popular in Mexico. People had known about it for years. I was practicing yoga and I went to see Prabhupada. I came with a group of people who were also interested in yoga. But when I saw Prabhupada, it was very incredible experience. I had seen many yogis, gurus, and Indian spiritual people. But when I saw Srila Prabhupada, it was a completely different experience. Suddenly, all the other gurus had no place at all for me. Seeing Prabhupada was like seeing a personification of all the teachings of the Vedas, all the description given in the Bhagavad Gita about a completely self-realized person. He was sitting and speaking with his eyes closed in such a serene way without any tinge of material expressions. When Srila Prabhupada returned to his room after the Sunday lecture, more than 500 people remained chanting Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada was sitting in his room with a few devotees, but the sound of the singing engulfed them. What kind of kirtan is this? Prabhupada asked. They're making so much noise. They're chanting your name, Chitsuhanda said, and he went out to try and calm the crowd. But finding them overwhelmed with chanting Prabhupada's name, he returned to Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada, he said, they want to see you. Well, let them come. Srila Prabhupada replied. The devotees arranged that everyone could come and see Prabhupada one at a time. Through the 2 doors to his room, it was arranged that the people come in a line, enter in one door, and leave from the other to return downstairs. One by one, they came through in a great procession. After bowing down with awe and respect for the great saint who had entered among them, they would speak a few words in Spanish. What are they saying? Prabhupada asked the devotees. Give me a blessing, a benediction. The Mexican devotee replied. Prabhupada, his index finger protruding from his bead bag, began to point to each person as they approached him and say, Hare Krishna. They were all very happy. June 5th, Early the next morning, Prabhupada asked Chitsukhanda, what will we do today? We have arranged a program in a nearby city, Kuranavasa, said Chitsukhanda. We have the use of the whole central plaza. They have given it for your lecture. They have microphones and a stage and everything all ready for you to come. Oh, this is very nice, Prabhupada said. Then you should reschedule to give another lecture at a big hotel in Kiruvanakvak. Chituskanda continued. And then we can go to Lakshmi Priya Dasi's house where we can take prasadam. Yes, this is very nice. Let's go. Srila Prabhupada took a light breakfast and left for Kirunavaka by car. On the way, one of the devotees explained to him that Kirunavak, with its scenic location in the mountains, was a favorite place for writers and artists, including Americans. When Prabhupada arrived, several hundred people were gathered in the main plaza of the city. The crowd was varied. Tourists taking photographs, farmers, hippies, shoppers, artists, and businessmen. After Kirtan, the devotees introduced Srila Prabhupada, who sat on stage before a large sign bearing the Mahamantra, while a devotee held an umbrella over Srila Prabhupada's head to protect him from the blazing noon sun. Srila Prabhupada spoke. We are not hippies, he said. We are happies. The devotee's happiness, he said, comes from associating with Krishna, the reservoir of happiness, through chanting Hare Krishna and through eating prasadam. Many people began nodding their heads in agreement. When he asked everyone to repeat the Hare Krishna mantra, many did. Suddenly, Prabhupada saw Hai Haya arriving with the newly printed copies of La Conciencia de Krishna es el sistema más elevado de yoga. Krishna consciousness, the topmost yoga system. Hai Haya had just gotten the books from the printer that day, and Prabhupada was happy to see them. Interrupting his lecture, he says, now you can all take one of these books and read them. The people actually came forward on Prabhupada's word and began to take the books. Hai Haya had only brought about 50 copies, but Prabhupada sold all of them. The people took the liberty of asking him for an autographed book, and he signed everyone. Immediately after the plaza lecture, Srila Prabhupada went to the Casino de la Salva. With no sign of fatigue, Srila Prabhupada lectured on the fundamental philosophy of Krishna consciousness. The audience was particularly interested in Hatha Yoga and Theosophy, and Srila Prabhupada carefully answered their questions, introducing them to the elements of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was next supposed to go to Lakshmi Priya Dasi's home to take prasadam and rest, but he decided to return to the Mexico City temple. The devotees drove him back, arriving about 8 p.m. So from 8 in the morning until 8 p.m., he had taken only water. The devotees offered him fruit, but he refused. He sat in his room, his eyes bright, his face blissful. This is the way to be happy, he said. Work all day for Krishna. Prabhupada asked for a cup of hot milk and puris with sugar. Receiving this, he crushed the puris into the sugar and drank the milk. A few devotees sitting with him were enthralled to see Prabhupada's transcendental happiness. This is our life, to serve Krishna, he said. Work all day for Krishna and take little prasad at night. June 6, before 100 students in an auditorium at the National University of Mexico, Prabhupada described the student's life as one of struggle. A student has to study diligently to keep from failing, and then after graduation, has to work hard for his food and other necessities. Material life is therefore always a struggle, ending in death. But a human being should ask why he has to endure all these struggles and sufferings and how he can become free of them. The auditorium was quiet. The students listened attentively as Srila Prabhupada spoke. But when he asked for questions, a communist yelled out, Where do you get the money to pay for your food if you're so renounced? I think you belong to the CIA. A few other radicals also began calling out challenges. Prabhupada promptly replied through his translator that because this university did not educate its students in the science of God, it was producing atheist demons. Further comments from the radical students were overpowered by audience applause. Srila Prabhupada called for kirtan and prasadam distribution, and the formal program ended. Many interested persons approached Srila Prabhupada, asked him further questions through Hanuman Goswami, who translated. Others sat taking prasadam. Several hours later, Srila Prabhupada left. The university incident typified the response of the Mexican people to Srila Prabhupada. With few exceptions, the people appreciated his work and the purity of his movement. As Prabhupada has said, people were simple and pious. Many still lived in villages and were similar to the people of India. Prabhupada also remarked that Mexicans were Sudras and that they were being saved by Lord Chaitanya's mercy. The Masonic Lodge is very popular among respectable people in Mexico, particularly government officials, politicians, and intellectuals. A devotee whose father was a Mason arranged for Prabhupada to speak at a prestigious Tuesday night gatherings. It was a regular scheduled meeting with some 60 members dressed, excuse me, Prabhu. Tuesday night gathering. It was a regular scheduled meeting.
What happened, Krishna Chandra Prabhu?
My phone was ringing. No, it's okay.
Are you okay?
I'm okay. A devotee whose father was a Mason arranged for Prabhupada to speak at a prestigious Tuesday night gathering. It was a regular scheduled meeting with some 60 members dressed in the uniform of the club. The devotees held kirtan and then Srila Prabhupada spoke in English while Chitsukananda translated each phrase as Prabhupada talked. Prabhupada spoke on the meaning and application of Varna Ashram Dharma, stressing the necessity of religion in all positions of society. The audience, immediately accepting Srila Prabhupada's authority and scholarship, asked intelligent questions, and at the conclusion of Prabhupada's talk, they stood and applauded. One official spontaneously glorified Prabhupada, praising his logic and his erudition. The lodge members, deciding to give Srila Prabhupada a monetary donation, passed around a basket and presented the collection to Srila Prabhupada. Only a few devotees had been able to attend the meeting. But upon returning to the temple, one of them told the others Prabhupada had the right answer every time at the very moment he was asked about the philosophy or about life or about anything. Everyone was impressed. June 7, on Wednesday afternoon, Srila Prabhupada left Mexico City and flew to Puerto Vallarta on the Pacific coast. Danny, a wealthy race car driver and friend of the Mexico City temple, owned a luxurious villa in the mountains overlooking the ocean. He had invited Srila Prabhupada and several devotees to spend a few peaceful days there before Srila Prabhupada left for Los Angeles. A neighbor had cows, and the devotees brought one up to Srila Prabhupada. Why do they take milk from the cow and then kill her? Prabhupada asked. Just like I'm giving you something valuable every day, but when I cannot give you any more one day, then you put the knife in my throat? This is not right. After a mild rain, the sky cleared. Srila Prabhupada sat outdoors on the terrace until sunset, his disciple seated at his feet chanting. The atmosphere was calm, and beyond the line of palm trees, the devotees could see the sun sinking into the ocean. As darkness came, Mosquitoes began to bite. Prabhupada, Chichukhanda asked, "You are not getting bitten by mosquito?" "No, they sure are biting me," said Chichukhanda. "Most likely because you're a pure devotee. I'm not pure. That's why the mosquitoes are biting me." "Maybe," Prabhupada said. "Here they are respectful, but in Calcutta they make no distinction." The devotees asked Srila Prabhupada questions about preaching. Since so many people they meet were practicing Hatha Yoga, they asked how to change the people's mind. Prabhupada said, "Let them do it. Engage them in service also. They will become purified." Another devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, "People are always asking me whether I have been to India. They think that if I am teaching yoga, I should have gone to India. You just tell them that India has come to you," Srila Prabhupada replied. The devotees looked at Prabhupada with great admiration. Yes, Prabhupada was India. India was personified, sitting before them, but he was more than just India. He was the spiritual world. All they knew of the spiritual world, and he had come for them. Prabhu, chapter
Jack.
9.
So we see here how favorable the people of Mexico City were, and Prabhupada, what is it, said that they were all Shudras, but they were getting the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So that's one, in fact, that's a glorification in the sense that Shudras generally follow whatever they're told. So in Krishna consciousness, there is no distinction between the different classes of people in the sense of Krishna consciousness. We consider everyone to be a Vaishnava. So whatever is a good characteristic of a particular uh, Varna, then that can be engaged in the service of the Lord. So the Shudras are generally, they follow uh, what is being told. So Prabhupada liked it that they were receiving Krishna consciousness very nicely. So we see that, of course, when Srila Prabhupada uses these expressions, he does not speak about it in a discriminatory way, in the way that people were filled with mundane ego use those words. Prabhupada is just seeing only the spiritual quality of the person, and he's only seeing. I mean, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gaviyastini. So Prabhupada is seeing everyone equally in the sense that he doesn't think one person is higher, one person is lower, because on the platform of spirit soul, uh, everybody is equal. But on the material platform, there are distinctions, there are gradations. But even if there are gradations, but nevertheless, every Varna has some outstanding characteristics which can be used in the service of Krishna. For example, the willingness to listen can be used very favorably in Krishna consciousness. So even though Prabhupada says they're Shudra, but they're getting the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, he's using it in a positive sense. He's not using it in a derogatory sense. And we saw, I mean, this is quite a lot of events. And we see how Prabhupada, on that day, when he is taken to that place, what is that name of the place? Kavarnaka. What's that place? Uh, Kuvarnavaka. Kuvarnavaka, something. Okay. So there we see how Prabhupada does the program from morning 8 to evening 8. And actually Prabhupada lives the philosophy. He says, okay, this is wonderful life. Do all work, do work for Krishna whole day and take a little food at night. Take a little prasadam at night. So we see how Prabhupada keeps up. There in Hamburg, it was a very slow pace of things. Here it was a very fast pace. Here things were very fast paced, and Prabhupada caught on with that. So whether it's slow pace or fast pace, Prabhupada would catch on with whatever was the situation, and he would turn that into a bright, Krishna conscious atmosphere. Any thoughts, reflections on this? Questions?
So, Prabhu, is Chichukhanda, is it Hiriyananda Goswami?
No, no, no,
No.
no, no. It's not. Would anybody like to share some thoughts or reflections, or do you have any question on this, what we did so far? This incident about Prabhupada saying, here they respect, but in Calcutta they make no distinction. I recollect this as having happened at New Vrindavan, but here it is mentioned as Mexico. So I don't know. I got a little bit confused when I read this, because so far when I read about this incident, it was about what happened in New Vrindavan. Anyway, we can verify. Earlier we saw in that Germany, I just forgot to mention that, how Prabhupada uses the example of the small tugboat. When he sees a small tugboat bringing an ocean liner into the port, massive one, he said, this is how Maya works. Even a small thing is enough to capture us. Maya has its own trick, has her own tricks. So even with a small trick of us, it can capture us, even though we may otherwise be strong. So we should always be careful of Maya. All right, so let's go on to the next chapter. Chapter 9, Zurich and New York.
Yeah. April 1973. Srila Prabhupada was staying in Bombay. Beside his own preaching and his translating of Srimad Bhagavatam, he was also pursuing the long drawn-out case to secure the land at Juhu Beach. It was a time in his life that he spent mostly in India with frequent trips to the West. The Krishna consciousness movement was growing rapidly under Srila Prabhupada's direct supervision, and his visits inspired devotees in ISKCON centers around the world. Srila Prabhupada had only recently come from Hyderabad, and there Shamashundar, Prabhupada's secretary for over 2 years, had become involved in a business venture. Several men had persuaded him to buy shares in a ruby mine. Shamashundar had begun digging up rough corundum to bring back to the West and sift for the valuable clear rubies. When devotees asked Prabhupada what he thought of Shamashundar's new business, Prabhupada replied, if he wants to do it, let him do it. Shamashundar had rendered him significant service as his secretary in helping to pioneer Krishna consciousness in England, and Srila Prabhupada, as Krishna's representative, was grateful. But he did not seem much impressed or interested in the mining prospects. On his way to Zurich, Shamashundar, carrying about 90 kilos of rough corundum to sell, visited Srila Prabhupada in Bombay. When Srila Prabhupada expressed his desire to rest for a couple of weeks from his traveling and management, Shamashundar described a perfect 2-week stay for Prabhupada at St. Moritz, the famous ski resort in southern Switzerland. It was off-season, he said, and tourists would not be there. The clean mountain air would be very healthy and pleasant. He even showed Srila Prabhupada postcards of mountainsides covered with wildflowers. Srila Prabhupada agreed. But when they arrived in Switzerland, it was cold as winter. Prabhupada, Shamashundar, Srutakirti, and Pradiyumana took a luxury train on mountains, curving and circling along the mountain parts to the resort. Srila Prabhupada's servant, Sutakriti, watched out the window, remarking at the beauty of the snow and mountain peaks. Everything was white. Prabhupada was silent but finally asked, what do they call this place? Sukriti replied, St. Moritz, Srila Prabhupada. They may call it St. Moritz, said Srila Prabhupada, but I call it St. Hellish. He then pointed out the beautiful snowscape was lifeless. He did not like seeing simply branches of trees and snows. It was only emptiness without variety. Where were the advertised wildflowers and green hills and beautiful climate? It was as if Srila Prabhupada had somehow been tricked on a pretense to come to a very cold, wintry mountain top, a place useless for his purpose, Sen hellish. Prabhupada wrote Giriraj in Bombay, tropical Bombay Juhu Beach, a truly important place that drew Srila Prabhupada's thoughts and desire. We have reached Zurich yesterday morning and have come to the health resort of St. Maurice. The apartment is very nice, but it's so cold that we cannot go outside. Probably we shall go to LA via New York on the 5th of April. Immediately after their arrival, it began to snow, although unusual at this time of year. With ironic disgust, Prabhupada remarked, I have come to Switzerland to stay in the snow. Sutakriti could find no dal or rice for Srila Prabhupada. All he could find was a farina. Prabhupada said he would show him how to make a farina chapati, but Sutakriti's attempts were unsatisfactory. There was no question in Srila Prabhupada's mind of staying 2 weeks at St. Maurice. He would leave as soon as possible. He asked Samashunda to arrange to immediately get them out of St. Hellish. Sutakriti. One morning, Prabhupada wanted to go on his usual morning walk. Living room onto a veranda. Srila Prabhupada said, we shall go out for a morning walk. Let's see how cold it is. He opened the sliding door. A big blast of ice cold air came in. Oof! It is much too cold, he said. We can walk in the hallway here. So myself, Hridayumana, and Prabhupada went out into the hallway, and Prabhupada started his morning walk. He would walk back and forth a few hundred feet down to this long hallway with just a whole bunch of doors going to the different rooms and an elevator. It was set up electronically so that wherever a door to a person's apartment opened, the light would go on automatically and stay on for a little like 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, the light would go off automatically. Whenever you push the elevator button, the lights would go and the door opened. In this way, they were conserving energy. The lights were only on when they were needed. It was expected that you would walk out of your room, the lights would go on. You would walk to the elevator, get in, and the lights would go off. There was no waste of electricity. So we were walking up and down the hall for a morning walk. It was a half an hour walk. They had these light switches along the wall. We would walk along, and wherever we would come to a button, I would push it, and that would keep the light on for about 30 seconds. We were walking back and forth, and I was regularly pushing the buttons. Then Pradyumna went inside. It was just Prabhupada and myself. We were walking along, and I had to keep regularly pushing the buttons, and we would be in darkness. Then Prabhupada told me he wanted to eat. He was feeling hungry because it was very cold. He said, you can make halwa this morning? I said, all right, Srila Prabhupada. Do you want to wait until after you walk, or should I go now? He said, no, I will walk. You can go make the halwa. I said, all right, went inside, but then I realized the lights were going to be out. So I told everyone inside the room, and we came to the door. We looked outside, and there was Srila Prabhupada walking up and down the hall, pushing the light buttons to keep the lights on while he chanted Hare Krishna on his beads. Meanwhile, Samashunda had invited Bali Mardan from New York to join them. Samashunda had information that the price of gold was rising, and they had planned to invest some of their money in gold. They intended to buy gold one day, sell it the next. and thus make a big profit. Bali Mardan arrived. When Srila Prabhupada heard that Bhagavan Das was preaching in nearby France, Prabhupada asked to see him. Bhagavan received Prabhupada's message by phone, and before coming, he had the French devotees prepare a big feast for Prabhupada. It was evening when Bhagavan arrived, and Prabhupada was sitting on his bed preparing to take rest. He smiled broadly to see Bhagavan, and Bhagavan said, Srila Prabhupada, I have brought a nice feast of prasadam. Prabhupada left his bed to take the prasadam. One by one, he tasted all the cooked preparation and then distributed the remnants. But late the same night, after midnight, Srila Prabhupada came out of his room into the room where devotees were sleeping. With his foot, he prodded Bali Mardan and told him to wake up. Prabhupada said he wanted to see everyone. They all rose and came to Prabhupada's room. Everyone could see that he was in a grave mood. He began by reproaching Bali Mardan and Chamashunda for risking so much money in gold speculation. The money Bali Mardan had brought was to buy a building for ISKCON, New York, and Shamasundar's money was also for the purchase of a building in England. It was not right to risk Krishna's money in this way, Srila Prabhupada said. Shamasundar and Bali Mardan both spoke up confidentially, trying to convince Srila Prabhupada it was a secure investment. Prabhupada cut them off. If you try to speak in this way, then how will I be able to teach you anything? And thus Srila Prabhupada stopped the gold scam. Staying up almost all night, Prabhupada lectured to them in his room. While it was true that anything could be used in the service of Krishna, Prabhupada admonished them that this gold market speculation was actually gambling. It should not be indulged. Something like young boys, his followers agreed to return the money to the proper ISKCON accounts and not to again speculate as if they were high financiers in the international market. The next day, snow still fell. It was cold. The Srila Prabhupada could not leave his room. He looked out the window and remarked, it is a white hell only. Finally, their departure tickets arrived and Srila Prabhupada left for New York.
Okay, I think you can stop there. We
Yeah.
see how Prabhupada here, it's a very funny episode. He calls Saint Maurice Saint Hellish. And Prabhupada firmly cuts down that plan of gold investment in gold. Prabhupada was not in favor of these kind of any such things which promise a large amount of money with a small amount of effort. Prabhupada was very conventional and very, what do you call that? Very careful about how money was being used and how money was being deployed. He was very orthodox or whatever in his methods of using money, and which because they don't involve high risk. Prabhupada is not interested in just making a lot of money with some risk. He wanted, it's Krishna's money. So first business is to keep it safe. Okay. So any thoughts, questions, reflections? Yeah, this one book has so many pastimes. Volume 7. We're heading into the Janmashtami weekend. Next, this we are on 18th today. 18 plus 7 is 25. So I don't know if how many. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the class can continue. But I don't know if any of you have any difficulty attending the next week's class. If you have, please do let me know. So we will then skip next Sunday. We can write on the Telegram group if any of you are not able to join. Then we'll have to plan differently. I mean, let us skip next week and then have it the next week after that.
I think best to skip next week, Prabhu. It will be a whole day affair for the Mondays and Mastini.
Yeah, the best would be to skip next week, I guess. Okay. All right, then we'll resume the week after that.
Happy Janmashtami.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha. I mean, you're also not able to attend?
Yeah, Prabhu, because Sunday we have Adivas ceremony.
Okay, so you'll all be busy with it. Okay, so we'll have it the week after that.
Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva paridanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.